In this edition of the Red and Blue Political Roundup, House Democrats say they want to hear from dozens of people and organizations tied to President Trump. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler issued 81 document requests. They include questions about President Trump and his family and associates, as well as his business dealings. It comes as the House Judiciary Committee launches investigations into the president. At the White House Monday, President Trump was asked if he plans to cooperate with the committee's requests.
I cooperate all the time with everybody. And you know the beautiful thing? No collusion. It's all a hoax. You're going to learn about that as you grow older. It's a political hoax. There's no collusion. There's no anything.
Let's bring in Niall Stanage. He's a White House columnist for The Hill and joins me now from Washington. So, Niall, what is the latest you're hearing from the White House about the document requests from the Judiciary Committee?
Well, in general terms, the White House itself is not taking a particularly confrontational approach to this. It's simply said that it has accepted the request, or it has acknowledged the request. Now, the broader issue is that obviously the president is much more combative, not just in terms of describing this as a hoax, but in terms of, for example, on his Twitter yesterday, talking about crazed Democrats who he accused of presidential harassment. So that's setting the tone, I think. The tone has been set by the president himself there.
Well, it's a long list. Were there any names on that list that stood out in particular to you, Niall?
No, because it is such a long list, 81 people or entities. Jared Kushner's there, Vice President Pence is there, pretty much everyone in President Trump's orbit, including people who have now exited that orbit, like, for example, Steve Bannon and Reince Priebus, who were both very senior figures in the early months of the administration. I don't think the importance here, Elaine, is any one person. I think the importance is this barrage by Democrats against the president and against people in his world. I think that has the capacity to greatly slow the administration down, in fact, pin it down for a very long time.
Well, the president said that he cooperates, quote, all the time with everybody. Do we know how the administration will handle these requests?
Well, we don't really have the details about what specifically they're going to do. I think we should look with some skepticism at that pledge by President Trump, or that suggestion that he always cooperates with everyone. If you look at, for example, the Mueller probe, he clearly doesn't. I mean, he was very critical and is very critical of the Mueller probe. There was a very prolonged process of negotiation about whether he would give an in-person interview to Mr. Mueller's team, and it appears he won't. So we have to, I think, be pretty skeptical of those kind of promises.
Well, could having such a wide scope leave House Democrats open to attacks from Republicans and the president, who say this is a fishing expedition?
Sure, absolutely. I was obviously doing my own reporting on this today for a piece that will be published tomorrow, and there were even some moderate Democrats talking about the idea that this could end up lapsing into overreach, especially if it is seen as targeting President Trump's family in an unfair way. And of course, Republicans and people loyal to the president are really casting this not just as a fishing expedition, but as a political exercise that they say has no real underlying and substantive purpose.
Well, of course, this all comes just days after the president's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, spent several days testifying on Capitol Hill. President Trump now seems to be suggesting, Niall, that Cohen's testimony was partially responsible for not reaching a deal with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. Can you walk us through the president's arguments here?
Well, the president has not completely elucidated his argument. It appears to be the idea that the testimony from Cohen was a distraction, or may, for example, have taken away focus from the Hanoi summit. It might have given Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, some sort of pretext to walk away rather than to make a deal. I think that explanation will be viewed rather dubiously by foreign policy experts. The sticking points with North Korea appeared to be pertaining to sanctions and to that regime's nuclear program, rather than what Michael Cohen did or did not say before Congress.
Right, as the president himself actually said after that, during that news conference. Well, on another topic here, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul announced he will vote against President Trump's national emergency declaration. That means Congress has enough votes to overturn the president's declaration. What are you hearing from the White House about a potential veto by the president?
The president will clearly veto this, and it seems highly unlikely that there will be sufficient votes to overturn that veto. Doing that would require supermajorities in Congress. There's no real suggestion that Republicans will turn against the president to that extent. Having said that, there is potential for political embarrassment here. Senator Paul's decision makes it virtually certain that this resolution of disapproval will pass the Senate. We've already three other Republican senators, in addition to Senator Paul, who appear to be poised to vote that way. And just earlier today, Rand Paul suggested that the number of Republican defections in the Senate could reach 10. If he's right about that, it will be a pretty significant rebuke to President Trump.
Well, Rand Paul is the fourth Republican senator to vote against the president. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, as I say, that will be part of the political embarrassment to the president if that transpires. It will assure this resolution of passage. Democrats will clearly cite such a result as emblematic of bipartisan disapproval of what the president is seeking to do with this emergency declaration. It won't, as we have just discussed, really stop the thing in its tracks, because the president can veto it, but it will make it a more politically difficult spot that he's in.
Well, finally, Niall, we heard a number of Republicans attack Democrats and socialism at this weekend's Conservative Political Action Conference, also known as CPAC. Does that seem to be the new talking point for the GOP and President Trump?
Yes, and I think it's part of a broader effort. And I think that effort is aimed at portraying anyone whom Democrats nominate for the 2020 presidential election as outside of the political mainstream. It seems pretty clear that there is a very concerted effort by the White House and by the Republican Party to use this label of socialism to try to render unacceptable various democratic options. Now, there are obviously democratic socialists in the Democratic Party. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez describes herself that way. Bernie Sanders, not officially a Democrat, but a Democratic socialist competing for the Democratic nomination. But the broader picture is one in which, yes, this is an attempt to really paint Democrats, and particularly those seeking the 2020 nomination, as outside the mainstream.
All right, Niall Stanage in Washington for us. Niall, thank you.